After seeing that his fist is working against Ba, Mantis released an endless wave of punches towards him, causing Ba to be on the defensive this time as he blocks Mantis's hits with his arms. The crowd appears to be happy with the change of tides as they cheered Mantis on while he continues to whack the shit out of Ba. As Kalli watches Mantis, he knew that his attacks were becoming more threatening because of how flexible and fast he is, which allowed him to lose any unnecessary stress in his muscles. The Mantis right now was even more of the creature as the aura of an actual Mantis appears behind him as he readies for another punch towards Ba. Suffering from Mantis's sudden power-up, Ba was thinking that he was ready to hit back, but due to Mantis's tallness, the angle he had to hit was pretty high. It was also hard for him to defend himself right now, but he decides to go in for a hit, believing that he could hit harder than Mantis, which would spell out the end for him. And so, Ba lets out a massive swing, but Mantis is able to dodge it easily. Seeing him all exposed now, Mantis couldn't help but smile as he finally got Ba. He sees Mantis's fist coming right at his face. The only word that came across his mind was, shit. Lights out, bitch. Mantis's fist finally makes a heavy hit across Ba's face, who couldn't defend against it at all. The result was him being flung back as he fell to the ground with his eyes all turned white. Mantis suddenly turns around due to the sudden cheers from the crowd. He decides to look at Nixer first to see his expression about his match. Nixer proudly shows his face to Mantis, giving him the nod of approval as he smiles. With this, Mantis screams out, "I win," loudly as tears of joy rained down his face while the crowd continued to go wild. Gadolf was now a happy drunk as he pointed out the fact that his apprentice had won. His loud laughter was embarrassing for Azalea, who covered her face while her father laughed. Meanwhile, Dormon was pissed off as he trembled with anger while holding onto his wine glass. He then tells Gadolf that they had 2 fighters left. With a wave of his hand, Gadolf grabs the attention of Valkyrie, ordering him to tell something to Nixer. With a drunk joyful face, he says these words, "You'll die if you lose the fight as the loser will be sent to the mine." And so, Valkyrie repeated the same words to Nixer, who was anxious about them. He turns around to Kalli and Torres, asking them if they heard it, but just in case, he tells them that their master was drunk right now. So Nixer was willing to persuade him later on, reminding the boys to surrender immediately if they felt like they were in danger. "No need," said Torres as he stood up. With a confident look on his face, he tells Nixer that he was going to win. Kalli looked up and could see that his eyes were full of spirit. But he was worried about the guy named Molga, as he thought that this man was on a different level than Ba. Soon enough, Torres and Molga faced off against one another as they entered the ring. Molga gave a piece of advice to Torres, telling him to surrender if he didn't want to get hurt as he knew for himself that he was different from Ba. But Torres simply smiles and cracks his neck, telling Molga to not say anything and just fight. The moment the referee announces the start of the fight, both fighters immediately went in for the killing punch as they each took a massive swing towards one another. The crowd went silent, and so did Kalli, as what happened next left everyone speechless with their mouths wide open. Torres manages to land his punch onto Molga's face while receiving one right in the center of his own face. Blood began to spill onto the ring's floor as Molga managed to land another punch, sending Torres flying backward. But he stops himself and prepares to dish out another punch of his own. Molga sees this coming and prepares for another punch himself. The 2 fighters manage to land a deadly blow onto each other's head at the same time. Their crazy fight that just started was enough to gain the respect of the crowd as they cheered even louder than before. As Torres pushes the blood out from inside his nose, he asks Molga about how many punches he had given him, while thinking that he had to act like a winner even if he was going to fall down. Molga didn't give him an answer. Instead, he was aware that Torres was used to dealing with other active fighters, but he still wouldn't let him win. But as he swings another punch towards him, Torres notices that something was off with the way Molga was punching him this time. Bang! Went Molga's elbow strike as it landed perfectly onto Torres's head. With even more blood dripping onto the floor, due to the cut on his head, Torres calls out Molga, telling him that if he uses his elbow, it would be cheating. But Molga brushes it off, saying it was an accident that happens often during matches. He also thought that it would be good for Torres to learn something good. As Torres wipes the blood off his head, he looks right at Molga, with a face that says that our boy intends on killing the man right in front of him. 18 people, that was how many people had collapsed against this cheating douchebag's hands. Although he had failed to become an A-class fighter, he was still proud to be a veteran. But as he fought Torres, who was unleashing a powerful strike back, which managed to land on his chin just as the image of an enraged boar is seen. Mulga wonders why this apprentice wasn't going down. The crowd cheers Torres on as they could see him as someone who was no different from a wild boar. As Kalli watched the fight, he could see that Torres was barbaric but also incredibly strong. The level of fight between Mulga and Torres was on a whole other level. Torres manages to land another powerful punch directly onto Mulga's face as he fails to block it at all. A massive amount of blood was spilled as pieces of his teeth flew out from his mouth while his eyes turned white. With that final punch, Torres manages to make Mulga fall onto the ground, resulting in his victory. Back at their side, Nixer went on to do some first aid, telling Torres that he did a great match and for also meeting the audience's expectations. As huge amounts of sweat dripped down all over his body, Kalli stood up to warm up and told him that he had done a good job. But before he left for his match, Torres called out to him, telling him that their victory now was all based on Kalli's performance. With a confident look on his face, Kalli heads out to his fight, telling Torres that he was going to end it and come back. And so, the referee introduces Kalli's opponent as the last fighter from the Dormon training camp, a fighter with 11 victories, called Burrito. The crowd began to make fun of Kalli the moment he stepped into the ring, calling out that he wouldn't win and that kids in their houses were much bigger than him. Ignoring the insults from the crowd, Valkyrie muttered under his breath, hoping for Kalli to win. But he immediately covers his mouth as Azalea notices what he was saying. She then turns around to ask him if he knew Kalli. Valkyrie answers yes instantly, informing Azalea that he had helped Kalli during training by throwing pebbles at him while he avoids them. Just as she was curious about the pebbles, Dormon grunted out loud, thinking that August's side had let their guard down by bringing Kalli, ensuring his own victory this time around. In a drunken state, August tells him mockingly that it would be a shame for them to lose 1 out of 3 matches, pissing off Dormon as he held back his anger. Azalea, on the other hand, was excited to see the match that Kalli was going to bring them. So we return back to the ring where Kalli prepares himself against Burrito. Burrito looks at him with a fierce look on his face, telling Kalli that he wasn't going to let him win. He instantly leaps forward a few steps, managing to close in to Kalli, who was shocked to see this. So he immediately retreats back to the rope, thinking that Burrito was much faster than he expected, making things dangerous for him. But as he retreated backward, Kalli noticed that Burrito was restricting his movements. He knew that if he reached the corner of the ring, it would all be over. So he throws a few punches, thinking that he needs to escape no matter what it takes. Burrito takes on the punches, commenting that they were weak. The crowd, however, were angry with Burrito. As a fighter with 11 wins, they shouted at him about why he wasn't using his fist. Their comments appear to have an impact on him as he turns to look at them. Kalli takes the time to talk some shit, taunting Burrito into using his fists properly. He figured out that Kalli was using the audience, which made him wonder why. But he brushes away those thoughts as he decides to simply crush Kalli down now. The moment he came in for the strike, Kalli's eyes activated the Sharingan, allowing him to dodge each and every one of the punches that Burrito was giving out. The way he dodged and moved left the crowd shocked as their mouths were left wide open. Even Burrito was starting to question if Kalli was really just an apprentice, as the senses he was showing were really sharpened. Dormon could only slam his fist against his chair, cursing at Burrito and questioning why he couldn't land a single hit onto Kalli. As he continues on to curse out loud, Azalea sees this and smiles, knowing that Kalli was different from your average apprentice fighter. She thinks that it was about time that Kalli showed the others how different he was from other fighters. As Burrito tries to land another punch, Kalli could see with his Sharingan eyes that he always uses the right jab, allowing him to easily dodge it while knowing that a left jab was coming followed by a right upper. We return to the time when Valkyrie was throwing pebbles at Kalli, asking him why he was dodging them. Kalli tells him that his body would break into pieces if he were hit by them, which prompted Valkyrie to ask what's the point since he didn't punch at all, as Valkyrie knew that in order to win, you needed to hit your opponent. So Kalli simply tells him, avoid it while waiting for the perfect time, which left Valkyrie wondering about what he meant by that. We return to the fight where Kalli was still just dodging with a plan in mind. He was actually watching his opponent's movement and analyzing their pattern. He could see that Burrito prepares his foot for a step, and moves his upper body for a punch. After analyzing his shoulder, chest, and waist, Kalli knew when he was getting ready to attack. But as he clearly sees the attack coming with his Sharingan eyes, Kalli wasn't sure about whether his fragile body could bear the hit or not. But as he recalls his past life experience as Kong Tae, he knew that combined with his body sense, it would allow him to win. So as he dodges Boruto's attack once again, this time, our boy was able to land a massive and powerful punch right on. Kalli's attack was working now as Boruto definitely felt the power behind the punches as it caused him to bleed heavily from his nose. But Kalli's strikes didn't end there, he even went on to strike Boruto's chin. People from the crowd to Nixer and even the nobles were stunned to see that Kalli was capable of hitting Boruto's chin twice in a row. Valkyrie now finally understood what Kalli told him as they trained together. He realized that Kalli actually did as he said as Boruto dropped to his knees. Staring at the ground with a bloodied nose, Boruto wonders how this could have happened. Kalli, on the other hand, was begging in his mind for Boruto to give up, as he realized that he couldn't use his right hand anymore as cracks were seen on his fingers. But then, Boruto lets out a fierce roar as he slams his fist against the ground. As he wiped the blood off his face, he stood up. Much to the horror of Kalli, who immediately went into a defensive stance. As Boruto looks at him, he tells Kalli that he was a rat and that he was going to crush him. It turns out that he had a nasty surprise waiting for Kalli as he held onto sand from the ground. So this douchebag decides to start the fight again by throwing sand directly into Kalli's eyes, causing him to close them as he grunts in pain. Boruto smiles at his reaction, knowing that no matter how fast he is, the moment he couldn't see spelled the end for him. Azalea was the first to shout out loud that what Boruto did was cheating. But Dormon assures her that it was Kalli's fault for not being careful, stating that it was natural when you fall to get some sand in your hand. As Kalli tried his best to remove as much sand as possible from his eyes, he knew that he couldn't get used to the way boxers fought here. As he slowly opened his eyes even though they hurt, a figure appeared in his blurred vision. Boruto manages to punch him right in the face this time, sending Kalli flying backward and onto the ground. But it seems like Boruto was still suffering from Kalli's previous attacks as he held onto his face, giving enough time for Kalli to stand right back up. The two fighters were now far apart from one another, both at opposing corners of the ring. Boruto rushes in first, shouting out loud that this is the end as he heads towards Kalli, whose eyes were still closed. He reminded himself to stay calm. His mind began to visualize where Boruto is, as he knew that the analysis of him was already done. So he follows along with what he knows, that Boruto always starts with the right jab. By just using his brain, Kalli was able to dodge Boruto's attack and counterattack with his own, resulting in Boruto's nose being bloodied once again as Kalli struck the same spot again and again. As he finally falls flat on his back, the crowd goes wild with their cheers for Kalli, who raises his arm in victory. He couldn't help but scream out as Azalea watches him with a new look in her eyes. She was in awe of our little fighter as he realized that the reason he was here was to feel this sensation once again. "This punk!" shouted Nixer as he grabs onto Kalli's head with a big smile on his face. He couldn't believe that they had actually won the battle. And so, Dormon, whose pride had fallen, left the territory quickly. Gadolf, who felt immense joy over beating Dormon, decided to give the three fighter boys 3 whole pigs as a reward. 2 months later, the harvest season has arrived. "Shit!" shouted someone as a crate of potatoes was dropped onto the ground. It turns out to be Mantis, who was feeling pissed off as he questions whether they were fighters or farmers. Kalli arrives behind him soon enough, telling him that he was complaining too much. He tells Mantis to think of what they're doing as strength training. "Wow, looks like our boy buffed up during the past 2 months. As Kalli places the crate of potatoes onto a wagon, a pair of farmers appear, telling him that he had done a good job and to take some potatoes with him. As Mantis and Kalli ate the potato, the farmer asked them if they were going to the harvest festival of Duke Westley. Mantis tells them that they weren't, as they were only apprentices, but would be going next year. The farmer was disappointed to hear that as they wanted to see more of their matches again. As Kalli waves the farmers goodbye, he turns to ask Mantis about what they were going to do at the harvest festival. His question made Mantis ask him if he was stupid. He informs him that the highlight of the harvest festival is boxing, and that their master is one of the Duke's relatives. Right now, Dormon has the upper hand as August and he were both competing under the Duke's sponsorship. Kalli tried to fake that he knew all the thoughts, just as Mantis questions if he had hit his head hard before. Ignoring the stupid question, Kalli looks back at the mansion, thinking that it's been a year. We turn to the August mansion's reception room where Nixer was showing signs of fear as he tells August to give him 1 more year. He informs him that even though the last match was well prepared, they won merely due to luck. August tells him that a letter came from the Duke's house. Even August was feeling scared as he reveals that the Duke must have heard that they won the last match. He even wanted to give Nixer more time, but the Duke wants to see the 3 apprentice fighters. As he places down the letter, August thinks about refusing. But Nixer knew that the Duke was one of the 5 dukes in the kingdom, so they couldn't possibly refuse. August tells him that they will depart for the Duke's house with an escort the day after tomorrow, so Nixer needs to get ready by then. He also tells him that the 3 boys were now official boxers. He informs him that he needed to stamp them with a mark. Ouch! That same mark now shows itself on a shoulder, freshly printed. Kalli could still feel that it was sore, but as he looked at it, he didn't mind it as long as he could box. The 3 fighters were tied together, following closely beside a carriage as everyone else rode on horses or carriages. A voice came out from the carriage, congratulating Kalli for becoming an official boxer. It turns out to be Azalea, who thanks our boy as it allowed her to walk side by side with the nobles. Kalli asks her if she was talking about him. She tells him she was, and so he thanks her for the compliment. The moment she peeks her head out of the carriage window, Mantis and Torres were blushing after looking at her. She continues to tell Kalli that he had changed a lot, showing the results from the training at the Harvest Festival. Mantis couldn't help himself as he whispers into Kalli's ears about how pretty Azalea is from her red hair and thick lips. He tells Kalli that you can tell from afar that she was a beauty. Kalli starts to recall past memories of her and agrees with Mantis that she is pretty. But Torres steps in, warning Mantis to watch his mouth or else he would die by Master's hand. Mantis decided to ignore Torres's warning, and continued to talk to Kalli about Azalea, while Torres was raging and giving him a bombastic side-eye from the back. Night soon arrives as someone announces that they would be taking a break before leaving again. The 3 fighters were busy scratching themselves due to bugs, wondering why they had to go around the mountain. Kalli tells them that it was because the bridge collapsed due to the rainstorm. As Gadolf turns to leave the carriage, he tells Azalea that she should sleep first, as the sun sets quickly in the mountains. He walks towards a soldier on a horse, telling him that they would leave early tomorrow in the morning. But the soldier warned him that there would be bandits rampant as it was the harvest season now. Just as Gadolf tells the soldier that the bandits were why he hired them, something catches Kalli's attention. He could see with his Sharingan eyes that there were multiple figures hidden in the bushes behind Gadolf and the soldier. He quickly tells Gadolf that there was something in the bushes and that they should leave now. But just as Gadolf was asking Kalli about where he was going, an arrow was sent flying directly into the soldier's face that was right next to him. More arrows appear to be shot as the soldiers gathered together to defend against them in order to protect the Baron. Nixer was quick to move to the bushes, telling the 3 fighters to follow him. But as Kalli turns around to see, he notices that the arrow shower has stopped. Instead, a huge group of bandits wielding weapons appeared. Kalli tells Nixer that they didn't have enough soldiers and suggests that he unlocks their chains so they could fight with him. The other 2 fighters agree with him. Nixer took a moment to think about it as he stared at the keys in his hand. In the end, he decided to do as Kalli says, telling the 3 fighters to only subdue the ones that approach them since protecting the Baron and the young lady was their number 1 priority. But a bandit appears with his weapon swinging, announcing to the others that he had found them. Kalli leaps in front of the others and manages to block the bandit's sword with his metal cuff. He takes the chance from when the bandit was surprised to land a punch onto his face. He quickly shouts at the others to not just stand there and go. Torres and Mantis soon regain their composure, wrapping their arms with the chains and calling Kalli a bastard who was not your ordinary guy. Kalli moves on quickly and decides that he needs to find Gadolf and Azalea. He spots Gadolf who was being protected by soldiers and was glad to see that he was safe. Gadolf shouts out loud that Azalea was still in the carriage, much to Kalli's surprise. As he raced against time to reach the carriage, Kalli could see that one of the bandits was already approaching it. He shouts at the bandit to stop, but he simply gives back a sinister smile to Kalli. Before taking a swing at our boy, who manages to block it thanks to the metal chains and cuffs on his arms. But as he fell onto the ground, Kalli could definitely feel the strong power from the bandit. The bandit soon rips open the doors of the carriage, much to the horror of Azalea, whose screams Kalli could hear.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.